Hello everyone, we are Let's Make Art and I'm Nicole Miyuki and I'm here to teach you all about lettering. We have a subscription box where we have all the supplies that I'll be going through and we letter weekly with a different project. So the first project that we're doing, or this is the second project, but the project that we're doing today is this guy. Woo! Oh, and I know I mentioned this before, but Keenan's gonna be in the back making funny noises like that.
That's what I'm doing.
You might hear his voice, he's guiding me. But this project that we're doing, the quote that I chose to do is "Done is better than perfect," because I know that there's a lot of hesitation when it comes to lettering because you might think that you have bad handwriting or bad cursive. And if you do think that, I'd like you to go back and listen to the beginner series that we filmed because you will hear a myth, because that is completely a myth, that if you have that, you can't do this. So I'm here to guide you through that. So the supplies that we're gonna be going through for this project, there are 3 different Tombow dual brush pens that I'm gonna be going through. Again, if you have different brush pens, different colors, go ahead and do that. But the ones that I'm gonna be using today are, this is 443. This one is turquoise.
Wait, you see my favorite color.
Yeah, it's turquoise. Okay, I had to rethink it.
Yeah, turquoise.
That is my favorite color.
That's a great color.
I love it. Okay, 443, turquoise. 296, this is just good old green. And then 993, it looks like yellow, but it's called chrome orange. So we're gonna go with it.
Sounds delicious and fancy.
I love it. Okay, so those, I'm gonna use a pencil and eraser, nothing fancy. I just like to use those to lay things out. The paper that I'm using is Bristol paper. So this is a smoother paper. This is what the final one is gonna be on. And then I also wanted to mention, I'm going to be using marker paper. So marker paper is a see-through paper. It's a little bit different than tracing paper. It's a little bit thicker than it, so I really like it. But I created some handouts for you all that you can go on our website and download, or if you have our box, that will already be in there, and to help you guide you. So that paper is gonna be good if you like to use that. Or you can use computer paper. And then, what else do we have? I think that's it. That's all the supplies you need to get started. So there are 4 different steps we're gonna go through in this project that I'll help guide you through. 1 is the foundation strokes. 2 is using the foundation strokes to connect your words, because I know that's something that people get a little bit caught up on. And I also want to prove to you that why cursive is different than your lettering. The 3rd one is we're gonna go through a pencil sketch and create the whole layout. And then the 4th is your brush pen. And we will have a project that you will make yourself. So the first thing that I want to show you is, this is, I'll have the final one so you can see what we're going with. This is the printout that I made. So you can either, I made it a little bit lighter so you can trace, or you can use marker paper like I said I was gonna be using. You can decide, but I want to show you why I love marker paper, because if I trace over this, you will be able to see it. So what is happening is...
Will you bring your paper down a little bit?
Yes, I can. Oh, thank you for reminding me. Okay, so what I want you to look at is when we are drawing. So the reason why, like I said, lettering is different than cursive is that I want you to really break it down. So what I did here is I took the quote that we're doing and I drew all the different foundation strokes. So you can see that this is a C and this is this guy. And then this is an O. The N is 2 strokes, so it's 1, so it's this guy, and then 2 is this combination one. So I'm going to trace over this so you can see that we're going to break it down. Again, we have in the foundation strokes beginner series, you will have this as a PDF that you can download so you can practice a little bit more. But for right now, we're just gonna go through this for the project. And I want to show you, so when you were doing this, actually, I'm just gonna draw directly on here.
I'm gonna need you to bring your paper down a little.
Thank you. I don't know why, I like to move it. Okay, so When we are doing lettering, if this is your first time doing it, you will notice that there are thin lines and there are thick lines. So when your hand is moving up, it's a thin line, and when your hand's moving down, it's a thick line. And what's going to happen is I'm going to use the tip to get a thin line, and then when I'm going down, I'm going to push really hard. So then with opposite, when I'm going down, I'm going to start by pushing hard, and then I'm going to slowly come up to get thin on the up. I'm going to go through all these actually to show you. So one thing that you can experiment with is your grip. I want you to grip. Do not feel, I'm not here to be your school teacher and tell you you have to grip a certain way. Everyone has their own grip, so I want you to do whatever is comfortable. The main thing is that you have control. So I don't want you to draw like you're drawing like this and you're kind of painting in the air. I want you to be supported and grounded and still go up and still go down by just applying different amount of pressure. The other thing that you can experiment with is if you try and figure out what angle of holding the pen works for you, sometimes if you want a really thick downstroke, it's easier, let me show you on here. It's easier to get a thick down by drawing at an angle rather than drawing straight up and down. So you can see I'm still applying the same amount of pressure, but I just can't get as thick. So if I'm at an angle a little bit more, I can still get up, and then I can push and I can really get a thick downstroke. The reason why I love these pens is that you can really figure out, maybe I don't want that thick of a line, and I'm gonna just apply medium pressure and then really light pressure. So you can experiment. So go through that, and then when it comes to the actual letters. So with lettering, what's happening is that you are just drawing these foundation strokes, but you're extending them, and you're actually drawing this line. So you're connecting them like that. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to draw a C, and then I'm going to extend it a little bit further to go into the next stroke. And then when I'm going the next stroke, I'm going to start right there, then on the up, thick on the down. And then I also want you to notice, which is why I said this is different than cursive, is because if I were to do it in cursive, cursive is created so that you can draw really fast. So if I were to do that and I would draw really fast and not think about it, that's very messy, but that's what that would look like. So that's why I want you to train yourself to really take it slow. And I know it's something that we want to get it done really fast and we want to be perfect at it, which is, again, why this is a great quote, done is better than perfect. So I really want you to try and train yourself to go a little bit slower. So I'll do a couple more just to show you. So thick on the down, thin on the up. And for this one, I'm going to come all the way across, and you can end right there. What I also want you to think about is if you end in an awkward spot, what I don't want you to do, or I want you to try and avoid, is draw it here. So if I were to do this again, whoops. If I were to do this again, so if I were to stop here and I started again, maybe a little bit closer, started again like that, you can kind of see the transition, rather than what I'd like you to do is if you ever find yourself needing to stop and take a break, that's totally okay. But what I suggest doing is overlap a little bit and then continue the stroke so that it's a less of a harsh transition. So that'll help you. That's one tip. So again, I'm going to do it. I'm going to overlap a little bit, then on the up, thick on the down. And then when I created this, you'll see I left little gaps. I did that because I want your brain to know that that's a different stroke and when to lift up. But you can totally connect them. So there's an empty space right there that I left, but I'm just going to connect it right here. So it'll be a seamless stroke. Thin on the up. So then thin on the up, thick on the down. Let me do a few more. So on the S, when we're looking at that, you can either take it as 1 and then 2, or you could just do 1. And that's what I mean by this I is pretty much or this lettering I is an extension of this, and it's just making this a little bit longer. So you're kind of, I like to say it's kind of like you're reaching out, lending a hand to the next letter to connect it, to bring it all together. So thick on the down, and I'm just gonna go all the way up. And then connect this here, thick on the down, then on the up. So go through that on your own and practice that, and then that is step 1. Step 2 is actually, that was step 1 and 2.
Nice.
Wow, because step 1 was the foundation strokes and step 2 is showing you all the connection. And then step 3 is we're gonna go through and create the layout of this one. So with that, let me get some. So when I use marker paper to practice, like I said, is if you can either draw directly over this or use marker paper, like I said. Then the other paper that I'm going to use when I figure out my layout is I'm using computer paper. So this is, the brand that I like is HP Premium Choice Laser Jet, and the reason why is that it's smooth, so that when you're using these brush pens over time, they will fray. They have a lifespan, and they do. So you can do things like picking different paper that will help it not fray as fast. So I'm just using a handy dandy regular good pencil. And for this layout, so I created if you look at this, what's happening is, this is another thing that I wanted you to see, is that not every quote that you do has to be in the center and has to be perfectly aligned like that. What I wanted to create was something for you to see is that you can totally left justify something, and that will help you, especially if you're starting out and this is a little bit intimidating. You might just tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna left justify everything, so you have a guideline to go off of. And I really love the negative space that it creates, so it allows this quote to breathe. So what you can do is I created this layout that it's just guidelines. Actually, I'm gonna show you, where's my grid paper? If you don't have access to a printer or you wanna just make your own guideline, another tool that you can use is grid paper that I really like. So how I created this was, I decided, okay, I want to, like I said, left justify this. So maybe I align everything on this line. So that's just my light guideline. And then what you're doing is you're creating the bottom of where you're drawing. Or you can draw the top if you want to create a cap, but I just like to draw the bottom. So let's see what I do. I think I started here. So I just figured that's going to be my line. And then you choose any amount. So this grid paper is 4 per inch. So I just decided to do 5. So that's just how big it was. So I just drew lines for myself. So that could be your guideline, and then you can draw and sketch directly on here. So that's another option if you don't have this guy. I'm just going to use this since we have this. What we are doing, so I want to show you why and how I got to deciding to make this is a little bit smaller. So when I had my quote, I told myself, pretend like this didn't happen yet. Done is better than, let me move this down. Perfect. So if this was my quote that I decided I wanted to letter, I'm going to try and see what it looks like if each of these has its own line. So when I'm doing that, actually, I think even when I started, I'm going to do it all in lowercase. So this doesn't have to be very nice. This can just be a light sketch. I'm just drawing them out. And if another thing is that if you are using my guidelines, what's happening is that I didn't want to be too technical and tell you guys, but just so I can show you what's happening is it's about halfway that these letters sit on, the smaller letters, which this is technically called the X height, but I don't want you to get so fixated on that because your letters can be totally different. So for example, is your letters can choose to be taller, and maybe they're all like that. So you can choose what you want. I'm gonna keep it consistent. I didn't want you to feel boxed in by anything. Perfect. Okay. So when I saw this and I looked at that, I realized what I want to train you guys to see is to looking, and I said this in my first video, I said I'm going to say this a lot, is take a step back and analyze and look at this because, excuse me, I need to clear my throat. This is something that I think is why people feel like lettering is just your handwriting. And I want to debunk that myth by telling you to take a step back and kind of look at this as an art piece rather than just my handwriting. So when I'm doing that and I'm looking at this, I see all of this space right here because this is such a small word. And with this, doesn't need to be as prominent, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, but as the other words. And then I also realize when I'm looking at this is there's this negative space right here, especially if I were to bring this a little bit higher, that's where I notice, okay, how cool if that letter fit right there. So if I'm doing this again, what I can do is just erase these guys. And, oh, and the eraser I'm using, this is the one that I love. It's Prismacolor Art Gum. The only thing is that it does have a lot of little, what were you gonna call them? Shavings.
Shavings.
But I just put it off to the end. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add done, and then I also realized is I wanna try and make D capital. So that's why I did that. So done. And then there's my negative space that I saw. So I'm going to add that in right there. It's just gonna kind of have its little home that sits right there. The other thing that I can see when I take a step back and I look at this is when I look for the negative spaces is I also notice this big space. So the beauty of T's that I really love is that you can choose to have a T like that, or you can choose to have a T like that, or you can choose to have a T like that. So it kind of depends what you're working with and when you want to use them to your advantage. So for this one, I'm going to, instead of making a little T like that, I'm going to cross this all the way over. And when I draw it, I'll leave a little bit so it's not crossing it over. But then that fills that space. I really like that. And then the other thing that I noticed is I also see this negative space. So the reason why my eye sees that negative space is when you have a taller letter. So this is the ascender. I want to try and not use so many technical terms so you don't get caught up on that, because I believe it's more about just seeing the spacing. But what's happening is that you have two tall letters. So you have the F and the T. So if I look at this space and I see that, another trick that I want to show you is on Fs, you could break it up. And some people might feel like that doesn't really look like an F, but I think it looks like an F. So you can do it if you want to. Keenan, you can tell me if you think it looks like an F.
I can't write in cursive, so it looks great.
This isn't cursive, remember? But I guess you're right.
It's shaped
actually
like a cursive letter.
I can mention this because if you have younger kids watching this and they don't know cursive, because the foundation is cursive, again, you can do your F like that if you want to, actually. You 1000% can. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. But there are a couple letters that are different in the block font as we learned as a kid versus the cursive font. So the F is one of them. I'm going to do a cursive F then, but so what's happening is I'm gonna break this up and I'm gonna mimic this same stroke and I'm gonna draw it right here and fill that space up. And so an F has a loop at the top and a loop at the bottom. That's what makes the F look like that. So I'm gonna have a loop at the top and a loop at the bottom. So then let me curve that a little bit more so it is a little bit bigger of a loop. So there we go. So then that fills that space. And then the other thing that I notice when I'm looking at this is I see this. So when you have I'm gonna do that and then I'm gonna do that. So then we have all these cool curves right there. This is just I want to give you guys everything that I see so that you can choose how you want to make it your own. But what I noticed is that There's also, this is a hard stop or a hard line. So what you can do is if I want to add and mimic kind of the same curve, is I can add and copy this and just add a little loop right there. And I know that because also on our, let me show you on this one. Well, actually, oh, I did it here when I was guiding you guys. So maybe you already did that and you wrote it like that. But the reason why is that this B is pretty much this stroke, just with the straight line and not a curve. So that's why I knew that I can add that there to mimic that. And then the other one was, did I do that on here? I did. So, oh, and I did it here. So the other thing is that on this one, I just drew, because when I naturally write, I tend to just draw straight lines. But I noticed that I can have the J foundation stroke and extend it, and it would start right here, or end right there. So I'm gonna add that right here as well. So curve that, so that's what my P will look like. P is an interesting connection because you also might naturally want to go like that, which is totally fine. When I tend to write it, I tend to just add a little loop. So again, this is all personal preference, so you can choose what you'd like to do.
The more I look at the letter F, it makes me think of Miss Clavel from Madeline running, chasing Madeline. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Nicole?
I hope other people have.
I hope so too.
I'm sure. I'm just really, is it a movie or a TV show?
It's a show. It's so old. I love the cartoons, the books, Madeline.
Oh, Madeline, yes,
Madeline,
with the yellow hat.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
and
yes.
Miss Clavel, yeah.
I didn't know that.
She looks just like Miss Clavel. So that's the F's name.
That's
Miss Clavel.
I love it. Okay, that's her name. So now looking at all this, I feel really good about it. The other thing that we can help train your eye to see is that keeping things pretty similar. So the one thing that I noticed is that my R, this is super minor. And again, I didn't draw this very neatly. It was more just a pencil sketch. But if you are at home and you do this and you think, why does mine look, it looks a little bit off, this is what this pencil stage is for you to figure this all out. So what I mean by that is I noticed that my R is a little bit skinnier than the rest of my letters when I look at that. So I'm gonna make it similar to this guy. So I'm just gonna erase this and make it a little bit bigger. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is that when I do my R's, as you can see on here, I love to add a little loop. So I'm just gonna do that so I know that when I get to that stage, draw this a little bit darker. So that.
So you put a top knot on the R.
I love that. I always have my hair in a bun, or usually, except when I'm filming. But my hair would be in a bun. So that's the bun. That's a top knot. I'm gonna call that, thank you. So this is the final pencil sketch stage. If you are, so there's a couple ways to transfer it because I know that we are doing this and you are trying to get it to your final paper. What I typically do is I like to use a light box. If you don't have a light box, it's totally okay. A couple hacks are you can either use a window when it's light out and you can put this up and then trace this other guy on top of it, or place it and then trace it. Place it, trace it. And then another one is that, I don't have it handy, it's okay. You can use a glass cooking dish and you can put your your phone on flashlight mode underneath it.
You want to show them?
Oh, I'll show them.
Okay.
Thank you, Keenan. Okay. It doesn't have to be a circle. It actually would work better if it was the rectangle one. But you just put this on there face down and then you put your phone underneath it on the flashlight mode. Put it underneath so that the flashlight's facing up and you have light underneath. Because the whole thing is that Bristol paper isn't,
It tends to attack.
Wow. Bristol paper is thicker, so it's not see-through, unfortunately, like the marker paper. So that's why you need to create a light source to be able to see it. So the other thing is that you can also use graphite paper, which I know Sarah from Watercolor uses graphite paper a lot. The thing with it for these brush pens is that they are really transparent, so you would totally see the line through. So that's why I usually don't do that, and I like to use a light box. So when you are using that, you can either use actually I'm gonna do this just to show you. You can choose to use a darker color. This isn't very dark, and you can use this as your time to practice. So you can decide, or you can figure out for yourself if this is still something you're getting accustomed to, is figuring out when it's thick. So just remember and tell yourself, thin on the up, thick on the down, and you can close your eyes. Well, I guess you don't close your eyes. I don't know why I did that, but
challenge. How many words can you get right with eyes closed and Nicole's technique?
I should do a video with my eyes closed. We'll see. Maybe that'll come later on. So thin on the up, thick on the down. And tell yourself that as you're going through this. So you can use this as your practice time. So you're totally just tracing. So you can go thick on the down, thin on the up, and then you can talk to yourself and do that. Or you can use a Sharpie.
Talking to yourself tends to help.
I guess I do talk to myself. Then, yeah, I do. So you can decide, or you can draw it really dark with a pencil, or you can do it with a Sharpie. Okay, we are ready for step 4. The brush pen, the final step. So let me turn on, blue tape. It doesn't have to be blue. It can be, you can also use washi tape, but this tape is painter's tape because it's specifically so that it's just gentler on things in general. So why I use that though is I will tape that down. So this is my Bristol paper that I'm using, so it's thicker. This is my final one. Oh, another thing I wanted to note, let me turn this off so I can talk, is you will notice that computer paper is 8.5 by 11 and the Bristol paper that we're using is 9 by 12. That is totally okay. And what's nice is that you can either, well, I'm just gonna show you what I like to do. So I would tape this down first, and then what's cool, 3 settings, is you can decide, actually, well, yeah, I'm gonna do this. So you can decide if you can see through, do you want this very much in the left corner, or maybe you do want this centered and it's totally, it's still left justified, but that's totally okay. Or you want it.
What a cool tip. Why? I would not have even thought of that.
Really?
Yeah, that's.
Oh,
but
I
I'm not
love
very smart,
it.
so that makes
Stop.
sense.
You are smart. I just yelled at you on camera. You can choose how you want to do it. So I'm going to stick with what we did and just keep it in the bottom left. But you can tell that my paper is all off. So let me tape this down. I apologize for yelling at you.
Don't worry about it. It's all good.
Okay. So what color? I was using the good old green. And you can breathe when you do this because you are just tracing. And this is also just paper. So if you mess up, it's okay. You can do it again. But I'm going to go through this all. Move this. So again, I'm going to talk to myself and go thick on the down. I'm going to lift up and then use the tip and lightly graze, so thin on the up. Make that awesome noise. Thick on the down and come all, so I just did that all in one stroke because again, that's that connecting point, that hand that's getting led to the O. And then keep going, thick on the down, thin on the up. So if you can do this all in one stroke, which is what I tend to do, but that's because I've been doing this for a while, so my hand just naturally does that. If you need to stop, like I said, that's totally okay and you can stop there. Oh, another tip I can give you right now is this part. So let's turn this off so you can see, is this hard stop. So one trick is that when you're doing this, is if you want to also create a hard stop, just lift up right away. Rather than if you trail, that was a big exaggeration, but you might notice that you'll have that little tail at the end. So again, what you can do if you want a hard stop is just do this and lift up. And the other thing is that you'll notice is that because my bristles, or the brush pen bristles, I call them bristles. They're not bristles. The brush pen is parallel to the end of the paper. That's why it's creating that hard stop, rather than if I was like this and it's parallel to the sides, you wouldn't have that hard of a stop. And you also wouldn't have that thick of a line, which I did also go through this in the tips and tricks on episode.
On episode 17, brought to you by Let's Make Art.
That would be awesome if you're the voiceover for it. The 6th video of the beginner series, this is one of the tips that I give. And this is one thing where I say how you attack the letter. And it sounds very aggressive. Attacking the letter, but that's the best word I can think of on the spot right now, is if you, instead of attacking the letter, if you were to do it, so if I were to do this D again, if I were to attack it from the bottom, I wouldn't get as thick of a line. So it's kind of a similar thing to how I was showing in the beginning, this versus this. So if I was attacking the letter from the bottom, that's what that would look like. Rather, if I attack it from the side, I can create a lot thicker line. And it also is what creates that thick or that straight bottom. If you were to be the opposite and attacking it from the top, that I just don't know how that would work. So I like to attack from the side. Another thing that I want to mention that I just thought of, because I know there are lefties out there and I know that it can get frustrating, but I promise you, and I said this before, there's a 12-year-old who is taking my class and is left-handed. It's possible. So I don't want you to get discouraged, but a few tips is that I've seen some lefties where they angle their paper literally like that. I have also seen people who are angled papers like that. So when I'm doing this, it'll be interesting because you can see. We'll figure it out. Okay, so when I'm gonna go left-handed, actually, let's just use this as a time to show you all, because I want to acknowledge this. So this is my great marker paper that I'm using. Some lefties are underwriters and some lefties are overwriters. Either one is not right or wrong. Again, I want you to just try and get comfortable. But if you do angle your paper, you are still gonna have the same concept of thin on the up, thick on the down. Obviously I'm not left-handed, so it's a little bit harder. Hopefully you can see this. If you just kind of figure out which way you do want to attack the letter. So it's a similar thing, because it's easier for me to attack it, as I can see right now, from here, because I can go thick on the down, thin on the up, rather than if I were to attack it from the bottom, it doesn't get as thick of a line, thick on the down, than on the up. So let me do one more just to show you that it is possible. So thin on the up, I'm just shaky. Thick on the down, thin on the up. Oh man. I'm gonna practice this because I want to get good at this actually. I'm gonna do one more so another thing that I realized as I'm experimenting this, which is exactly probably what you all feel, even if you're right-handed, you're trying to figure out how the heck do I grip this. I would also experiment with is how close you grip it on the actual pen itself. So I noticed that I was gripping kind of higher and I felt like I didn't have enough control. So I'm gonna grip a little bit closer and see if that works. Oh yeah, that feels way more comfortable. Yeah, even that to that you can tell. So those are things that you can experiment with, your placement on here and then also how you attack the letter. So that was just a side tangent lesson I wanted to give you all. Let's finish this guy out. So thin on the up, thick on the down, give that little hand extension, thin on the up, thick on the down. So let me go through, I'm gonna do this in blue just to kind of mix it up. So this is a lot smaller. So you can decide how Let me show this one here. You can decide how thick you want it to be. So I want it to have a similar thickness, but if you want, you can also play with, let me turn this off again. I just keep thinking of other things I want to tell you all. So this versus if I were to kind of apply medium pressure, well, that's actually all light pressure. But you can tell as it's the same, it's a similar size letter, but if you play with the amount of pressure, you can manipulate if you want it to be a lot thicker or if you want it to be thinner. And this is something that will come with just, which is why we're doing this, which is keep writing and figuring it all out. Your different pressure. So you can even, if you're still a little bit nervous about this and you want to practice a little bit more, another exercise you can do is you can just practice going thin on the up, and then maybe as you go start to apply medium pressure, and then when you get to a certain point you think, okay, I want to go thicker now. You're going to go down and you're going to apply pressure, and then maybe you keep going and then you can apply the most pressure. So you can see the range that you can get simply from this pen, and it's by the amount of pressure that I am applying. So that's a good thing you can practice with. Okay. So I'm going to apply a similar amount of pressure, maybe a medium amount of pressure, because if I were to make it so thick, it would look a little bit different because it's such a small letter. So thin on the up, thick on the down, thin on the up. So I can see what I'm tracing, so it's nice. So thin on the up, thick on the down, and here's that hard stop that I'm just lifting up. So I can see I have this really big connection. Let's see. Thin on the up, thick on the down. You can choose, so if I were to stop here just to give my hand a break because that's a really big stroke, I also realize that there's a lot of space. I'm going to move this E a little bit over and then extend. So I did that whole E in one stroke. So then thick on the down, thin on the up, thick on the down, thin on the up. I'm going to let go. Thin on the up, thick on the down. So this one, I'm going to extend it all the way to make that top knot. I love it, Keenan. And then, so I'm going to overlap a little bit, and I'm going to do this stroke, and then thick on the down. Okay. What was I going to say? Oh, I had a thought. I also want to show you is, I just keep thinking of other things, is on an R, because I know that's it is also one of the other letters, like, I was going to say Miss Frizzle.
Miss Clavel. You mean Miss Clavel.
Do you know who Miss Frizzle is?
I know the name.
That's from Magic School Bus.
Oh, yes, it is. You're right.
We could call, no, Miss Frizzle has to be another, like a K or something. A different letter. But I was going to say, like the F, Miss Clavel.
Miss Clavel.
Is, the F is different in your print versus your cursive, and the R is another one because technically that's how you would draw your regular R. So I want to show you is with the R, I'm going to draw it on here so it's not see-through, is with an R, what I want you to focus on is coming down on this at a diagonal. So what I mean by that is if you draw like that, sometimes it's harder for your eye to read that that's an R. So it's a little bit easier to create this diagonal stroke to create that R. The other thing is that I also would try and avoid making a big, so you can go on a diagonal, but what if you create this more of a hump? That kind of looks like it's an almost M. So that's why I just try and guide you all to just come diagonal. And you can choose to take this in 1, 2, 3, or see if your hand can go thin on the up, thick on the down like that, and then thick on the down. And the other thing is you'll notice is I don't go super thick on my downs actually, on that one because it's kind of a half down, it's like a diagonal. So you can choose, but I just choose not to have it super thick. Anyways, that's the R that I wanted to talk about. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, the other thing is I always cross my T's at the end so then I can see what space I'm working with. So I'm going to fill that in like that. And then, okay, so thick on the down, then on the up. So I did not stop. I did that entire one. Give that a try. See if you can do that. If you can't, it's okay. You can break it up into the, where's my other guideline? Oh. Into 2 strokes like I did here. So 1 and then 2. I just did that all in one because that's just how my hand naturally went, I realized. So thin on the up, thick on the down. So that's this stroke that we just did, and then a C for the first part of the A, and then that stroke. So again, here's another one. You can either stop there if you want, and then maybe overlap a little bit, and then create that. It's like a candy cane shape.
That's delicious too.
So then I'm gonna cross my T, but what I decided to do is, well, that wasn't even that good, but it's all okay, is you can leave a little bit of space if you don't want to have a cross over it. So I'm gonna cross my T, but then when I get here, I'm gonna draw all of that. But here, I'm just gonna add a little right there. So leave a little bit of negative space. So kind of like it's feeding through. I guess if it fed through, it would overlap. But again, personal preference, whatever you feel like. Excuse me, I'm gonna keep going. So thick on the down, this is that J stroke. Now I'm gonna extend it, and if you want, you can stop there. That might be a good point to stop because you have that right there where you already can see where the transition would go. So if you do that, I would overlap here and then continue and do the rest of this like that. And then maybe overlap again, then on the up. Here's that R again. So I'm just going to do this whole stroke like that. Again, if you need to stop, it's totally okay. Oh, here's our friend, Miss Clavel.
Here she comes.
Okay, so I'm going to, on these guys, you can choose if you want to make them thin or thick. I'm going to make this one thin and then go a little bit thicker. So I notice my hand is cramping because that's a very long stroke. If I need to release and lift up, that's totally okay. Again, that's why this is different than cursive. Overlap a little bit, thin on the up, thick on the down, then on the up. So I just decided to do that all in one stroke. So let's, ooh, and you might lift up because I was trying to focus on lightly grazing. It's okay. No one will ever know if you go back over it. Thin on the up. So thin on the up, thick on the down, release, thick on the down, then on the up, cross my T, and then there we go. So, whew, that feels good. The other thing that I want you to look at is this. I don't want to get too focused on making it perfect because that is not, well, obviously done is better than perfect. Again, why I picked this quote. I realized.
Plot twist.
But if you were looking at yours, I want to just give you all the tips I can give you if you are frustrated and you feel like yours might not look as good as what you want it to. One thing that my eye just immediately noticed, and again, it's because I took a step back and I'm analyzing it, is I just realized that this is such a thin stroke compared to all my other ones, especially if you can see the other E's. I love how they're different shapes, or the way that the E is looked, but if I'm just focusing on line thickness right now, that one is a little bit thinner. So you can totally just go back over it. And that was all I wanted to do, was I just wanted to make that one thicker. That was the only one. Then the final step, so when you're ripping this off, still be gentle. There we go. Okay. So I did this. It's interesting. It's kind of cool to even look at. I made this way more in the bottom left-hand corner even than this final one, but it's cool. I love how they're all, this is what we're going to see. We're going to see everyone's unique take on this. Okay, so the final step that I want you to do is I want you to practice on circles. And I know seems very basic. Actually, I'm just gonna do it on my final one. Actually what we're gonna do is, we're gonna go with green. And what I want you to do is draw how big would you say that is?
No. Quarter inch.
No. Okay, I thought you were gonna say quarter. I was like, it's not a quarter cent.
It's the size of a quarter.
However, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just choosing to make them, my green circles are gonna be my biggest one of all of them. So I will show you how random my circles are. There's no structure to it. You're just gonna kind of space them out. You don't want to have a clump. Well, you can. Maybe that's like a starburst or a bubble burst.
That's what I was gonna say. It could be bubbles.
Actually, they are bubbles. But
turns out,
I can say this now. That's why I'm wearing the shirt, because of the circles.
That's so great. How wonderfully coordinated you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so when you're doing this, I want you to, again, think about thick on the down and thin on the up, even though this is such a small thing. But I know a lot of people get tripped up on making that thin line. So while we're practicing and making our final piece beautiful, it will work. And you don't have to focus on it being perfect, because done is better than perfect. Right, Keenan?
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna go thick on the down and then really try and get a thin. And that actually, I didn't get that much of a difference. You can really get a thick if you want. Then on the up. And maybe actually, I'm not getting that thick of a thick. So I'm gonna remember what I told myself, and I'm gonna try and attack the letter from the side and angle it. Oh yeah, I can get a little bit thicker. And if you skip, that's totally okay. But I want you to just practice thin on the up. Well, I really need to practice this. Thick on the down, thin on the up. So just kind of add circles wherever your hand moves. I'm just picking different spots. So again, thick on the down, thin on the up, maybe one right here. Okay, then I realize these are all my eraser shavings. I will remove that at the very end. Okay, so then take your lighter color. I'm using chrome orange, even though it looks like yellow to me. I'm going to do this, but I'm gonna make them a little bit smaller just to kind of mix it up and really see if you can create the variance. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding them in spots that I see where there's negative space. Again, there's no exact pattern that we're trying to create. We're just trying to create bubbles, circles.
Bubbles. Like the fish in Finding Nemo, Bubbles.
That's my favorite movie.
It's such a good movie.
Such a good movie. Okay, so adding them wherever my hand kind of moves. Let's see. You can choose. Okay, then the last one is taking your blue, and I decided to do this because this is the darkest color and I didn't want it to kind of overpower the entire quote. So that's why I chose to do my darkest color with the really small bubbles. So this one, I want you to challenge yourself and see how light you can get. And with this is maybe you're not so focused on thick and thin on this one. Let's just see how light we can get in grays. So I'm just really going to use the tip of this brush pen, and I'm going to just lightly, you can see how I'm just lightly grazing. Again, I'm not focusing on thin on the up, thick on the down. I am just going to do all thin and see how light you can get. My hand is just moving fast because that's how we're going, so we can get through this, but you can take this at your own pace. Oh, and I skipped. I'm just gonna add it. So again, wherever, let's see. Take a step back. Keenan, can you see any holes?
Looks great.
There's a lot of holes. A lot of bubbles.
There's one right in the middle of one of your bubbles.
A lot of holes because they're all circular. Oh, I want to watch Finding Nemo now. Okay. So, well, you can keep going for days and keep going. But that is it. We did this, and I hope you really helped walk yourself through this, and remember that done is better than perfect because that is the whole thing. I know that so many people get tripped up. Like I said, this is supposed to be fun. These are different exercises for you to help get your muscle memory gained up and to also show that you can make something. You can hang this, you can give this as a gift. That's the beautiful thing about lettering, is that it can help spread joy to other people. So the few places that you can connect with us, we have an Instagram that's Let's Go Make Art. And then we have a Facebook group. We have a Facebook page that's Let's Make Art. And then there's also a lettering group called Let's Make Art Lettering, where I want to see what you made. So post it in there, and I know that sharing is something that you might want to hold tight because it doesn't feel ready to be posted or shared. That is why I want you to do it, is because it'll help show other people and yourself that by just sharing this, you're going to keep growing and learning because we're doing this together, and done is better than perfect. Thank you all.